Okay, good morning. Let's go ahead and get started. We've got some empty chairs, so folks, if anyone wants to sit down, feel free. Okay, that wasn't a good sign. Okay, good. Um, so I'm going to try to stay close to this microphone because we are live streaming this as well. I think I'm cutting in and out, aren't I? Let me see if holding it. I think holding it might be better. Do what? Bells, because that's the only song that I know. So we'll do the best we can here. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Al Osgood. I am the alumni treasurer. Hang on a second. We're going to have a redo? Okay. Hello. Is that better? Excellent. Thank you. Okay. Good morning. I'm Al Osgood, the alumni treasurer for the House Association. It is class of 1988. I would like to be one of the first to welcome you to the Thomas R. Dean's chapter house of the Phi Lambda Theta chapter of the Chi Phi fraternity. To say that this acknowledgement and this dedication is well overdue is an understatement. And I'm so pleased to see the turnout here today and thank everybody for coming. We're going to have a short ceremony out in the yard here, and then the highlight will be when we go into the archives room and unveil the plaque and picture of Tom. We're going to start with an invocation by the active chapter beta, Jacob Beaver, class of 2022. Jacob?
Can you hear me? Okay, I'll take that as a yes. Yeah, I'd have to go down a little bit for this one. Maybe I should take this out. No, whatever. Hello, everybody. My name is Jacob Beaver. I'm the current beta of Phi Lambda Theta. And on behalf of Chi Phi, we feel honored to have so many alumni, brothers, friends, and anybody in between to attend such a special event today. I would like to take a moment to recognize everyone here by saying thank you. It means a lot to us. Everybody in it is putting forth their best effort to make this ceremony, this moment, and this day incredibly special, and one worth remembering for probably the rest of our lives. So, to me, this is the ultimate goal of brotherhood and the ultimate goal of this fraternity. This is what being in Chi Phi is all about to me. Everybody here in attendance, I look around, I see, I'm going to say, probably around 100 people. And it really warms my heart just to see the turnout for this, for Tom, and for everybody here, right? This means an incredible amount to so many different people, whether you're in this chapter actively, in this house, wherever you are, all over the country, all over the world. This is very special. This is awesome. And quite frankly, there's nothing that would compare to this that I've ever seen. This is a first for me, and that's so I have a big smile on my face because I'm just awestruck by all the faces and all the friends here. So I'd like to take one last thank you and say that I appreciate and respect everybody that is in this yard and whoever's maybe some stragglers in that house, but thank you all very much.
Thanks, Jacob. I also want to take a moment. We have folks participating via live stream on YouTube, so welcome to that group as well. And in theory, assuming this all works, this is being recorded and will be available on YouTube following the event for all of us to watch at our leisure. I'd like to take a moment and introduce some invited guests, and I will, very, very quickly tell you that I will miss some. And Tom, I'm sorry in advance if I do miss some, but I want to introduce some specific people. And of course, to no surprise, we need to start with the guest of honor, which is Tom and Gail Deans. And I'm gonna say some thank yous at the end of my discussion, but there's one person that deserves the thank you up front, and they deserve the thank you throughout the presentation, and that, of course, is Gail. Go ahead, please. We owe a tremendous debt of gratitude to Gail for her commitment, because without her commitment, guess what? We don't have Tom's commitment. So without Gail's support, we wouldn't have Tom, and quite frankly, without Tom, we wouldn't all be here today. So Gail, a huge thank you from all of the Phi Lambs and Chi Phis. We really appreciate it. Tom and Gail have some invited guests here that I just want to mention and just have you wave, please, when I call your name. But Gail's sister, Darlene Lyons. Hi, Darlene. You and Gail don't look at all alike. Close friends, Bernie and Janice Oldsway from Florida. Good morning. Thank you for joining. Gary and Bernadette Burkle and daughter Madeline from Muncie. Thank you for joining. Our technical advisor, Tom's nephew, Tom Deans Flagel from Martinez, California. And first cousin, Michael Demko, and wife, Jackie. Good morning. We're also very honored to have President Gary Soika with us. And I want to give a little bit of a plug, and I'm trying to speak into the microphone, but I want to give a little bit of a plug for President Soika, and I have a warm spot in my heart for Dr. Soika because he started in the fall of 1984, which is the same time that I started. And he and his family were wonderful about saying that we were all starting at Bucknell at the same time. And to this day, I remember that. And Dr. Soika was here from 1984 to 1995 and continues to be President Emeritus and Professor Emeritus of the university. So we really appreciate him being here today. I missed that one. Thanks, Tom. Gail's nephew, Michael Zettelmoyer, and son, Aaron. Thank you. Sorry, guys, sorry about that. Okay, and then we also have our national representative, Derek Hinton, with us. Where's Derek? There's Derek. Excellent. Okay, and then lastly, and while he's not a guest, he deserves introduction and a lot of credit, and that's the current chapter alpha, Ben Snook. Where's Ben? Poor Ben had no idea what he was getting into, and he has done an absolutely amazing job of pulling this event together, so thank you very much, Ben. There are two people that aren't with us today that I also want to mention. Number one is Brother Walt McConnell, and if it weren't for the fact that he's recovering from a serious bicycling accident, he would have been here no matter what. So we certainly miss him. I remember year after year of Walt coming back and having a slideshow about his world travels. And then the second person is Dean Chip Marara. And as some of you may know, Dean Marara died unexpectedly about 2 weeks ago. And Chip, as he was known, was here at Bucknell for 18 years and was very involved with students, faculty, and staff, including being in charge of the fraternity and sorority office. So we worked with Chip over the years, and he was a huge supporter of the fraternity. And in fact, when I invited him to the ceremony. It took him about an hour to send me back an email, and here's what he said. He said, "Thanks for the invitation, Al. Tom is a great man and deserves recognition for all his efforts. I will do my very best to attend and have no problem saying some words. Take care, Chip Marara." So Chip, too, was a great man and a huge fan of our fraternity. So I'd like to ask that we observe a moment of silence in honor of Chip. Thank you. At this point, I'd like to ask Dr. Soika to come up and say a couple of words.
I feel a little bit like I've just interrupted a family reunion, and so I will be brief. But that's not just a metaphor. This is clearly a family, and it certainly warms my heart to see it. We know that the Greek system here and everywhere has its ups and downs, and there are times when everybody's pretty good with it, and then there are times when the knives are out. It's wonderful to be with a brotherhood that has as its very founding mission addressing several of the obvious faults of the rest of the system. And those of us that care for the Greek life have always been grateful to Chi-Phi and to Phi Lambda Theta for addressing those issues. It's also wonderful to be here today at a time when this chapter has chosen to do something truly remarkable. Because for collegiate Greek chapters to do what they're supposed to do, it's only reasonable to expect that there has to be some kind of input from persons with life experience, long commitment, who can stand a few feet away from the chapter house and bring wisdom as well as leadership. And today this chapter has had the good sense to recognize a person who has done that, and I can say in all honesty, done it better than I have ever seen anyone else do it. So what you've done today elicits the words fitting and proper. And I guess those words are, after all, fitting and proper. Congratulations, Tom, and congratulations to this brotherhood for what you have been, what you continue to do, and what you're doing today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Soika. Next, I'd like to ask Jack Conboy to come up. Jack is our Alumni Association Secretary, and he's going to say a couple words.
Thank you, Al. First off, a big thank you to Al and Harley Bennett. These two gentlemen put a lot of effort into this, and they should be commended for it because obviously, you know, doing it out of goodwill and their love of Tom. So thank you, guys. Appreciate it. I'm going to keep my remarks very short. I was part of the group in 2004 who brought this chapter back from sort of a dormant period, and we wouldn't be here without Tom Deans, honestly. Chip Marara was also very instrumental, but Tom is the reason we are all here today. And I can say that unequivocally. None of us would be here without Tom's efforts. He just means so much to me personally and to this chapter, and I am so, so grateful that he's being honored. And, you know, really, everyone really owes Tom so much, and I think as you get a little bit older, not that old, 15 years out, you kind of, you really realize, like, what it takes to put this kind of commitment in. You know, life happens, right? Job, family, kids. It's really hard to stay involved. Tom Deans has been doing this for 60 plus years. I mean, it's really something to be said for that, and very proud to, you know, be associated with this chapter and with Tom especially, and Gail, and just really grateful. And this is such a long overdue honor, and just really, really happy that it's happening. So congratulations, Tom. Thanks.
Thanks, Jack. So I think our new motto for the day is fitting and proper. That fits really well. Next, I'd like to ask Derek Hinton. We're honored to have national participation here today, particularly given that National has a big event today in Boston going on. And so Derek's going to say a couple of words, and then he's also going to speak some more at dinner time tonight.
Thank you, Al. First, I want to say thank you to the brothers of the Phi Lambda Theta chapter for having us here today. It means a lot to be able to be from the national organization and share this moment with you guys. Tom, I want to thank you personally. Ever since you walked into Chi Phi's life in 1984 until today, you've done some really great things, and some of those I've recently learned about since joining staff 3 years ago. And so I just want to say thank you. You have a great chapter here, and I'm excited to share a little bit more about you and celebrate you tonight. So thank you.
Thanks, Derek.
So this afternoon, for the brothers of the original Phi Lambda Theta chapter, before you became a Chi Phi brother, I will be holding an alumni installation ceremony for you following this house dedication. So that will take place inside. So come and see me after. Thank you.
My guess would be that's probably going to be about 1 o'clock after lunch, but we're going to kind of play it by ear because I'm already running longer than I should. But you know what? It's fitting and proper. So I'm not going to steal the thunder of tonight, but we have had several people that have sent in pre-recorded videos because they couldn't be here for many reasons. We have about 8 or 10 videos that are going to be shown tonight. But as I was putting together the videos, or more correctly, as my son was putting together the videos, there were comments in the videos that really struck me. So I'm going to read you snippets of the videos without trying to steal the thunder of the presenters. So just bear with me for a second here. So Bucknell Dean of Students, Amy Bedell. And Gail, you need to be careful that we don't get Tom, you know, we don't pump up Tom too much, okay? So you keep him level here. But so Dean Bedell says, our Greek letter system has been shaped by your leadership and by your dedication. Now that's one sentence of about 8 that she said, but I thought pretty meaningful. Chairman of the Board of Trustees of Bucknell, Chris O'Brien, who we're very fortunate is a brother of Phi Lambda Theta and Chi Phi class of 1980. Chris's comment was, you were vital to the growth, development, and existence of Phi Lambda Theta. Bucknell current president, John Bravman, said, had it in your heart and in your soul and your mind and your blood and your body to take care of this place, to make contributions way above and beyond what anyone could rationally expect. The world needs more people like Tom Deans. The new Chi Phi Grand Alpha, Steve Hopkins. I just wanted to give you my heartfelt congratulations for the great honor being bestowed upon you this weekend by the Phi Lambda Theta chapter. There is no Chi Phi. There is no Chi Phi I know of more deserving of such an honor. And I'm truly sorry that I will not be able to be there in person to celebrate with you. Please accept my best wishes for a fantastic event, and I look forward to the next time we are able to gather together as brothers. And then lastly, President of our Alumni Association, John Purcell, class of 23. It is truly an honor to put Tom Deans' name on our chapter house. While we may face different challenges today than what Tom saw as an active, the tenets of diversity and inclusion still ring true. Tom has championed these values for over the last 60+ years of his involvement with the fraternity, and adding his legacy to the chapter house will remind us of these values every day. So those are just some of the snippets of what we're going to see this evening in some of the pre-recorded videos, in addition to a wonderful list of speakers who will be talking in person, many of which are in the audience right now. Okay, I'm getting ready to wrap up. I want a couple of thank yous. Obviously, this event doesn't get put together without a tremendous amount of effort. So the first thank you, because we can never do enough thank yous for her, is Gail. Again, Gail, thank you. Alpha Ben Snook, thank you for everything that you've done, and all the brothers that have helped. And when the crazy alumni say, go get the chairs from the back and bring them to the front, but nobody's sitting in them, I appreciate that. And by the way, they need to go back down to the back. The planning committee, and Jack mentioned that, but Harley, we certainly couldn't have done this without you, so thank you very much. I don't know about you, Harley, but I'm looking forward to getting some free time back starting tomorrow. Exactly. And then also, Dave Campolongo. Dave, thank you for everything that you've done. The house looks dynamite. People haven't seen it yet, but the plaque and the picture that we're going to go see in the archives room in a moment, Tom and Gail and Dave did a wonderful job of getting that put together, so thank you. John Purcell was a wonderful resource on the website, and we really appreciate his help. I mentioned earlier Tom's nephew, Tom, for your help with the technology. I don't think you had any clue when you showed up that you were going to get hoodwinked into that. And by the way, he was supposed to work while he was here, so he would work for some period of time, and then he'd come figure out our AV so that we could have a mic that works. So thank you, Tom. And then I also want to thank, and hopefully if you have a chance to meet them, they are wonderful ladies. Our chefs downstairs who are getting lunch for us right now, Sarah and Heidi. And they, and we could have, you know, had a pizza lunch or a box lunch, but absolutely not. So we're having a fully cooked, and I snuck in the kitchen and it smelled really good. So I want to acknowledge Sarah and Heidi for their help. They're not here at the moment, are they? Okay. I want to also thank all the alumni that came back. This was no small task to get people to come back. So thank you for doing that. And then I also want to thank the Bucknell Center for Alumni and Family Engagement. Some of you may have met Kim Thompson, who was here earlier, but they were very helpful in getting the invitation out to people. And then I jokingly mentioned my son Evan, but lastly, without his audio-video skills, we wouldn't have these pre-recorded videos, so I certainly thank him for that as well. Okay, so lastly, I want to end this portion of the ceremony with some personal comments because I won't be attending the banquet this evening. I've had the privilege of being alumni treasurer for the past 31 years, which means that I've had the honor of learning from and working with Tom for those 31 years. And the way I kind of think about it is it was kind of the second half of his 66 years. So my predecessor, Don Ward, and he were doing their magic for the first number of years, and then I've had the privilege of working with Tom for the past 31 years. It would be an understatement to say that Tom was the driving force and so instrumental in every single thing that we accomplished. And I started to try to put together the list, and I couldn't. And by the way, Tom's memory's better than mine, so he'll have more details than I do. But we've at least been through a couple of significant renovations. We built a kitchen, and not only did we build a kitchen, but it's successfully operated every single year, which is very difficult for a kitchen to do. And one of the reasons it does that is because Tom's meeting with the chapter on a weekly basis at Dunkin' Donuts or Perkins or wherever that particular week's meeting occurs. I'm sitting in Ohio, but Tom's the one that's here doing the day-to-day stuff. And then lastly, in addition, and then operation of the kitchen, recolonization of at least one chapter, and probably what makes me feel the best is looking in the audience here and thinking about the absolutely strong, high caliber chapter of young men that we have at the moment, where our biggest problem is we have to be choiceful how many we can accept because we don't want to get too big. So I'm very proud to be here today and see everybody in the audience. And as I wrote in the brochure, which hopefully everyone will take a brochure and read at your leisure, I'm absolutely confident that if it were not for Tom's lifetime commitment and his dedication, we would not be here today. This chapter would have gone by the wayside years ago. So in summary, Tom, thank you for your lifetime commitment to the chapter. And the naming of this chapter house in your honor is only a small token of our appreciation for everything that you've done for the fraternity. While I won't be there in person tonight at the banquet, I'll be there in spirit, and I will be there on the computer screen listening to all of the speeches and the activities. So let's have one last round of applause for Tom and Gail. We're going to do it again. Okay. So we're going to prepare to move into the archives room for the unveiling of the plaque. Before we do that, a couple of things. For those on live stream, the screen is going to go black for a moment. Please continue to stay online. We're going to move the technology into the archives room. We're not disconnecting, so just hang tight for a couple of minutes while we move into the archives room. We're going to need to be a little bit careful in the archives room because it's not quite as big as the front yard. So what we'd like to do, and this is a wonderful problem to have, what we'd like to do is ask the folks that are seated to kind of be the first that go into Tom and Gail and family and immediate guests. We would like to kind of head into the archives room. There are 10 or 15 chairs. We're going to try to do a little bit of circling around the back, but as one of the more paranoid COVID people, I would like to try not to be in there with, as sardines. And what we'll do once we finish in there, we will The first group of people will then go downstairs and help themselves to lunch. And I believe is some of lunch being served directly, Harley? Or is everybody going through the? Okay. Then we'll figure that part out. But then I think what we'll do, I'm guessing, given the size of the audience here, that we'll likely have a second wave in the archives room, and then everyone else will go downstairs. Okay? So at this point, and by the way, please wear your masks while we're in the archives room. So unless we're speaking, we would like people to wear masks if that's okay. So at this point, let's adjourn into the archives room. Thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen. Is that too loud? Okay. It's working. We like that. So the live stream is back on. Welcome back. It's my privilege to officially introduce our current alpha, Ben Snook, class of 22. He is studying mechanical engineering, which we all know is not very easy. So congratulations on that. And again, a huge thank you for everything that you've done. And it's only appropriate that Ben would be the one that provides some comments and then pulls the curtain. So thank you, Ben.
All right, well, good morning, everybody. I just want to reiterate everything Al said and thank you all for coming back and joining us for this special day. It took a lot of hard work to get it here, but we're very glad to be here at this point. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Ben Snook. I'm the current chapter president. So I've had the pleasure of working with Tom for about 10 months now. So as a result, I probably can't understand the significance of this event to the same degree that most of you can. But since my first time getting to Chi Phi a couple of years ago, there was always talk of this mysterious man, Tom Deans, who had all the answers to all of our questions. Pretty much any time we had a meeting, it ended with the alpha saying, let me run it by Tom before we go through with that. So in the following 2 years, I was elected president, and I began to understand the significance of the relationship between Tom and the chapter president. We talk every week, and he really just keeps me on track and making sure we're going down the right direction. And so to an outsider, to hear that we're naming our chapter house after one of our alumni, it may seem a little bit extreme. But I think if you know anything about Phi Lambda Theta, you understand that this dedication is long overdue. Naming the house after Tom is deserved because I don't think that we would be here without him today. Tom has navigated the chapter for decades through times of great success and through times of very little success. But it's your persistence through those times of little success that is the reason we're here today. So thank you, Tom, for all you've done for us. We really appreciate you. Yep, okay. Oops.
Okay, that wasn't part of the plan.
So close to flawless.
Well, again, a well-deserved and, as Dr. Soita said, fitting and proper. So we thank everybody for participating. At this point, wave one are more than welcome to get downstairs. Ben, go ahead.
The Phi Lambda Theta chapter house of the Chi Phi House shall hereafter be known as the Thomas R. Deans Chapter House. In gratitude for his 66 years of service as alumni secretary, vice president, and president, for his 35 years of service as alumni advisor, and more recently as a Grand Council member and chairman of the National Accreditation Committee, October 2021.
I think I can walk around the front. Okay, may I have your attention, please? I know some of you may not be done eating yet, but in an effort to not let this ceremony go too long, we want to try and get started as soon as possible. I'd like to first welcome any who are joining us on the live stream, and we're sorry you can't be here, but we're glad you're joining us on the live stream, and the recording of this program will be available on our YouTube channel later on, and so if you missed any of this, you can come back and watch it later. Again, I'd like to welcome everyone to this momentous occasion in the celebration of Tom Deans, and it's just, as people have said this morning, I don't know if not everybody here was here this morning, but we had a wonderful ceremony at the fraternity house, and it was acknowledged there that this is kind of a rare occasion for a fraternity to make a gesture like this, but there's nobody more deserving than Tom Deans. So I also would like to thank the active chapter. They did a wonderful job in helping us organize this event. The house looked great this morning. It was very cleaned up and in good condition, and we love the condition.
Man's word is his bond. Chivalrous behavior crosses the ages to touch the heart of Chi Phi. I believe in the friendship of Chi Phi. Whether on the road or in the chapter house, the hand of brotherhood is always extended. The strength obtained from the union of congenial minds is the backbone of the fraternity. Our founders sought for nothing less. Finally, I believe in the future of Chi Phi because I believe in myself. When I put forth my best effort and combine that with the strength of my brothers, we can achieve the victory of continual existence. As long as the Almighty permits, I will strive to better myself through the teachings of my fraternity. Being a more aware citizen, a more able person, and a stronger Chi Phi shall be my reward. Thank you, Brother Deans. Next, we have Brother Giannetti.
All right, good evening, everybody. Good evening. How's everybody doing? A round of applause for everybody. Okay, now look, one of the things I think is important is, I know there's probably going to be about 11 or 12 times that you're going to want to applaud during my speech. However, this is something that the guys, I heard it in the back. I was surprised that the guys did it still. But what we learned, Duke Lee came with us and lived with us when we were a founding group back in 1984. And when you heard somebody talking, heard a brother talking, instead of, the easy way to let them know that you have assent with them, that you agree with them, is snap your fingers. So let's try that. Girls, I'm sure you're not used to that. Let's do it. All right, so when you hear the snapping around, you're like, okay, that's great. That way everybody's on the same page. All right, and it gives the speaker a little feedback too. Not so many clacking, you move right on. But listen, we're going to make this easy. We're not going to make this hard. We're going to make this real easy on everybody. All right, but let me tell you this. I was a little disappointed earlier this morning. I thought I was going to speak at the dedication this morning, all right? I thought I was going to speak and I even went up to Al Osgood and I said, Al, I prepared a speech. He says, we'll do that at dinner. We'll do that at dinner. And I said, no, I have a speech dedicated. So listen, what I'm going to do, my second speech is not that. I'm going to read that dedication speech because it's a damn good speech, and I want you guys to hear it. All right, is that okay with everybody? Can you give me clicks? Okay. So imagine I'm standing in front of that, and Al Osgood. I know Al Osgood is watching this live, and I hope he's squirming right now because he didn't want me to speak this morning, and now I'm going to speak anyway. Thanks, Al. Good night. You listen, you don't do that to a fraternity brother. You know, you don't do it to John Giannetti, that's for sure. Okay. This is the dedication of the chapter house. Pardon my glasses. October 2nd, 10 a.m. Good morning. See how inappropriate that is? 150 years ago, about 100 miles south of here, our 16th president said some brief and memorable words while dedicating a cemetery here in Pennsylvania. Those of you who know your history know that's Abraham Lincoln. Okay. It's often been believed that he crafted those words from a much older speech, that of Pericles' funeral oration in Athens some 2,300 years before. So perhaps you will excuse my use of the president's speech as a model for my brief words here this morning. In 1974, that's 207 years ago, the fathers of our fraternity built this house on this hill with the idea of providing a home for young men who shared their common values, those of equality, regardless of faith, race, or national origin. We are met here today in front of that house, having provided a haven for the defining years of hundreds of young men. We are dedicating and renaming the house in the name of Thomas R. Deans, a man who, by far, stands alone as the most influential and important member in the history of our fraternity here at Bucknell. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, renaming the house is only a reminder of the values that have stood the test of time, those of friendship, love, truth, honor, and personal integrity. The combined and common values of the Phi Lambda Theta fraternity and the Phi Lambda Theta chapter of the Chi Phi fraternity, no man better demonstrates these virtues as Tom Deans. Let us all hope that naming this house after this great man will motivate the men who pass through these doors during their college years and whose heads sleep below the eaves of her gables, and that these virtues shall be remembered and valued well beyond the lives of those who are here in attendance today. That these values of friendship, love, honor, and truth shall be our guiding star, and that the efforts of Tom Deans, Harley Bennett, Biff Hoffman, Al Osgood, and all the others, Mel Woodward, Don Ward, on this earth. May God bless Tom Deans, may God bless this house, and may God bless the Phi Lambda Theta of the chapter of the Chi Phi fraternity. Everybody. All right. All right. Now on to this speech. And this one's a little bit more on the cuff, off the cuff. I didn't write it word for word, and you'll all be happy about that. So let me say good evening to Tom and Gail, of course. Rick Hess, the former national director. Do you know he's in our presence? The former national director here. He's also the godfather of my son. Alumni members, members of the chapter. The title of my presentation tonight is called Worth a Life. And it'll make sense at the end. It's just the general theme. If you just think about, what did Giannetti say? Yeah, it said a bunch of crazy stuff, but it was about worth a life, and that's the theme here. I want that to resonate. First, let me say that I come to these speeches every 4 or 5 years. I often gauge the success of our chapter based on the collective beauty. Women are at my table here. Gail Deans, Heather, Jan Bennett, and Ellen. So let's do a round of clicks for all the girls here tonight. I know that it's hard for us to endure. It's even worse for them to endure. It's just recognize that and give them something special. One of the other times, one of the other things that you realize is when you're an active, you hear perhaps before you meet him, you say, oh, there's this alumnus. His name is Tom Deans, and they describe him for you. And I tell you what, after knowing him his whole life, having been his employee, I actually worked for Tom Deans my senior year. Having that love for that man, I can honestly say this, and of course it's all with good humor sometimes, that people say, well, there's no other person in the world like Tom Deans. And I can say, thank God there's only one of them. Well, the best way is to just sort of describe him as like a tornado or a hurricane. So you call him Hurricane Tom. And sometimes when you're the active chapter, you hope that Hurricane Tom didn't hit your house, right? It's just, Tom, please, please. But it was that energy that was transferred to us and allowed us to achieve great things. And one of the things that I did that I wanted to find out was what was Tom like as an undergraduate? Now we got these great brochures. So we see what Tom was working with, all right, back in 55, all right? This is what he was working with. But I asked some of his classmates. I think Tom was here today, another Tom, graduated 55, and I wanted to find out what type of a man he was. When he was a student here at Bucknell, I found out, we used to call them horn dogs. Guys that would go after the women, and so Tom was absolutely like that. Now he wasn't as bad as Dan Lockney, wasn't quite as bad as Dan Lockney. I heard that was going to get a laugh. I don't know Dan at all. Dan, I apologize. And he liked to drink beer. Tom liked to drink beer. He liked to drink lots of it. Not as much as Ben Snook. But Tom could hold his beer much better than Dorf can hold his beer. That's what I'm told. Right. No. And Dorf actually lives in my old room. You know that room with the cornice on there? That cornice on the ground floor? I put that cornice up, 1985. All right. So Tom also played tennis. I'm going to show you a magazine here. I'm going to show you a magazine that I'll explain in a second. But this is back in those days. If you've ever seen like the basketball of the 70s, the shorts that they wore almost embarrassing. So you can imagine that when Tom was on the tennis court, he wore shorts like this on the tennis court. And that's all I can say is, Tom, I'm glad you don't wear shorts around the chapter house anymore. Thank you very much. But what this is many people have sat and talked about the values of this fraternity. And the people you've heard Harley and you've heard Tom talk about the values that drew them to this fraternity. And I'm telling you what, they talk about a magazine, Collier's magazine, and how Phi Lambda Theta fraternity was noted in those magazines as being one of the first revolutionary fraternities. You guys have read the story in the history of the fraternity, and you know that when young men went off to Europe and off into Asia to fight the battles of this country in the 40s, they were in the foxholes and they were on the mountains and they were in the jungles with their brothers in arms who were often a different race than them and were often a different religion from them, but they were fighting for them. They're fighting for the same things. And then these same gentlemen come back to colleges and see these fraternities that were only white and only Christian or only Jewish. And said, that's not gonna work here. That's not gonna work here. So it took me forever to find this. So Collier's magazine was a national magazine. It's funny, there's a joke here somewhere, but did you ever see The Princess Bride? You ever see The Princess Bride? All right, Princess Bride. So the Princess Bride grandfather, it's Peter Falk. Hey, Ben, can we put that video up here? I got a picture of this. It's funny. Because the guy looks like Tom Deans. The grandfather looks like Tom Deans. Okay, he's going to do it for a second. But anyway, so the grandfather comes into the grandson who's sick, and he says, he's watching him play video games. He says, when I was your age, television was called books. And so my thing similar to that is, in my age, this is what a magazine is called, right? In my age, websites were called magazines, right? This is a magazine. Back then, this was the way that they communicated. This was a weekly magazine. Collier's magazine, I looked it up. This edition alone had 2,800,000 copies were mailed out during this time. So Collier's magazine, and this is January 15th, 1949. All right, that's Collier's. And the reason I'm bringing it up is this is the magazine that everyone's talking about. Imagine this, a national magazine, and the United States only had 150 million people at that time. So look at this. This is the spread. The Fraternity in Crisis. This is a 3-part series. All right? But here's the part, here's the thing that's important, this picture that you see. It's 5 young gentlemen. I'll read it underneath. It says, the membership of Bucknell's Phi Lambda Theta represents the anti-discrimination forces on campus. This house has varied religions and races living in harmony. So this is what said it. This is what set it in stone. The men at Phi Lambda Theta were nationally known, nationally recognized as one of the leaders. And the values that was instilled into those gentlemen, that was after 49, are the values that Tom held when he arrived on the campus in 51. Right, that's just on the heels of this. Now, this was almost impossible to find. This is I want to give this to Tom as a gift from tonight, Tom. This is the original. Here's the original Collier's magazine right here. But the idea is that those values that were instilled in Tom and those members are the values that took Tom and is what has driven him for the rest of his career. I mean, imagine that. We are now celebrating Tom's 66th year of service to this fraternity. I was watching a movie maybe 20 years ago. It was a TV movie. It was like a B movie, but it was about the life of Thurgood Marshall. And some of you may know Thurgood Marshall. Thurgood Marshall was the first black member of the Supreme Court. He was also, once he graduated, he went to the university. He tried to go to the University of Maryland. That's my alma mater, my law school. And he was not allowed to go to the University of Maryland because of his race. So as soon as he got out of it, called Brown versus the Board of Education, separate but equal, and he won that case. So Thurgood Marshall is the subject of this movie that I'm watching on TV. And in this movie, people knew about Thurgood Marshall. He hadn't been a Supreme Court justice yet. He was still a lawyer. He's going through down Mississippi. And a reporter's following him. And people are burning crosses wherever he's going to speak. People are putting nooses over trees wherever he's going to speak. And people are shooting at him. And the reporter says, "Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this, Thurgood?" He says, "Because I believe in the cause," and this is the key, "and the cause is worth a life." The cause is worth a life. It was worth his life in his mind. And then I thought to myself, is there anything that I have in my life that's that important that it's worth a life? That it's worth your life? The thing that you spend your life doing, is there any cause that you have for that? And I thought about that. I mean, I started a nonprofit based on that ideal, but I want to try to each challenge you. I mean, we're just sitting here at a dinner in Lewisburg, okay, we're great, but listen, you're in your 20s. If you can come up with a cause, it took me to be in my 30s, 40s before I arrived at the thought, what do you care so much about that it's worth your life, spending a life for a cause? It doesn't have to be the only thing you do, but I challenge you all to try to find it, and we'll come back to that near the end of this. So with that, the ideals that we found that many people have given their lives for, for equality, for democracy, those are like the men who went over to fight for our lives. A lot of people give their lives for these values. Is there a value that you can find that's worth your life? A fraternity, not based on race or background or natural origin, of who your family is, and personal integrity. Tom Deans has been the constant lifeblood of this fraternity on us. May God bless the Phi Lambda Theta chapter of the Chi Phi fraternity. Thank you all.
New fraternity, all forms of hazing were eliminated, but the years ahead were not always smooth, as you know. Phi Lambda Theta folded a few times and even closed from time to time due to dwindling membership and financial pressures. Fortunately, whenever the future looked bleak, there were always some outstanding alums who came to the rescue. Of course, you are familiar with most or all of these names. They include Biff Hoffman, good old Biff, Clyde Bailey, Jake Davis, Don Ward, Al Osgood, Mel Woodward, Walt McConnell, Dave Campolongo, and Harley Bennett. And you all know that in the pantheon of outstanding individuals who stepped up in crucial times to save our fraternity, there is one alum who stands out especially for the quality and length of his service. Of course, we're talking about Tom Deans, the man we are honoring here today, for his tireless and unceasing support of everything connected to our fraternity. The honor certainly is richly deserved. When Tom was a senior in 1955, there was a very bad split among the alumni officers, and all of them, including Biff Hoffman, resigned. That could have been the end of PLT, but it wasn't, because Tom volunteered to serve as alumni secretary for 6 months. Fortunately for all of us and the fraternity, those 6 months grew to become more than 66 years. Even before joining PLT, Tom was imbued with the multicultural principles and benefits of our fraternity. Over these many years, he has been the chief keeper of these principles, committing himself to nurture and sustain them among actives and alumni alike. For many years, he addressed each incoming class of Phi Lambs, as well as each senior class, on the importance of living and promoting Phi Lam spirit. In 1984, with the help of Bob Long, Bob Johnson, Mel Woodward, and Harley Bennett, Chi Phi was selected for this affiliation because it embraces Phi Lam's values. Since then, Tom has contributed immeasurably to make Phi Lambda Theta chapter a shining star in the Chi Phi constellation of chapters. Tom served as beta of Chi Phi, that's like number 2 person, and as a member of the Grand Council for 20 years. In 2006, our fraternity fell on times once more and ceased operations. Ben Portman was a freshman then, and he was looking for a fraternity with Phi Lam's values. There weren't any at the time, but a Bucknell staffer told him about Phi Lambda Theta and Tom Deans, and he suggested he contact Tom. Of course, Tom took that as a challenge and pitched in, and the result was a reorganization and renaissance of our fraternity and a burst of growth to new levels of success. Amazingly, and with the strong support of his wonderful wife, Gail, Tom made all these contributions to PLT while building a very impressive resume of personal career accomplishments, such as preserving historic towns in Pennsylvania. Fellow Phi Lambs, there's no way I can adequately cover Tom's 66 plus years of important and continuous contributions to our fraternity in the few minutes available here. Maybe the best conclusion would be to hear some words about Tom from 2 Phi Lam brothers who work very closely with him on fraternity matters. The first message is from Ben Snook, class of 2022. Quote, Tom has inspired me in many ways and has shown me the value of continual dedication and service to something meaningful. I cannot imagine Phi Lambda Theta without his guidance, end quote. The next quote is from John Giannetti that we just heard from recently, class of 86. Of all the men I've known, Tom Deans is the best example of a man who lives his values. He was guided by the highest of principles, and his example stands as a model for the way that all men should live their lives. Never has a single man had such an impact on the lives of so many young Bucknell men. Very impressive comments. And now, a few final words from me. Tom, you are a terrific guy, and you have delivered a lifetime of terrific services to the Phi Lambda chapter of Chi Phi fraternity. Tom, on behalf of all the actives and alumni and friends and Phi Lam chapter of Chi Phi members everywhere, and on behalf of everyone, all those people, Tom, we want to thank you from the bottom of our hearts.
Thank you, Tom. And thank you for leaving your flashlight here. This is wonderful. So, yes. I can't hear you, I'm sorry. So continuing on, I didn't tell you about Tom's career, but Tom Carney, but just briefly, he worked for many years in the World Trade Center, and Jan and I can remember visiting him in his office one time, high up on the Twin Towers, and he spent most of his working life there. Anyway, why are we getting feedback here? Our next speaker is Frank Wood, and I mentioned him in my earlier remarks. Now we get to Frank lives in Westport, Connecticut. He pledged in 1958. He graduated in '62. He received an AB and BS degree from Bucknell as part of the 5-year program in chemical engineering. He then went on to receive his MBA from Rutgers. He's lived an illustrious career. He's traveled all over the world. He's lived all over the world. He worked for Union Carbide for 28 years. That's back in the days when you worked for the same company for a long time. Those years are gone. But anyway, so Frank he was president when I pledged, as I mentioned before, and he really inspired me greatly in becoming committed to this fraternity. So Frank, would love to have you speak to us tonight. Thank you. Do you need the light? No. Okay.
Now, for all those young people back in the back, the time period we have is if you were to look at TV today and see a basketball game in black and white and all the guys were in short pants and they were all white, that's the period of time that we're talking about, okay? It was quite some time ago. So when I came here for Bucknell, I wanted to be a chemical engineer. I thought of Pratt and I call it Clarkson and RPI as alternate possibilities, but they were too small, totally technical, and too cold. And Bucknell was a little bit further south. The brochure looked good, and I said, this looks good. Now, in the mid-50s, and the reason I definitely wanted to go to college was that I excelled in high school and academics. I was okay. In social organizations, president of this and that, president of my junior high, I was okay. But I didn't have a single date. And the only date I had was one date to senior prom, and that was a girlfriend of my sister, so that really didn't count too much. So I really wanted a social life. Now, I think you say you're probably crazy for a young black guy in the mid-50s to pick out Bucknell as a place to come and improve his social life, but on the brochure it looked good. So I came here, and right off the bat in the quad, we elected a president. I was elected president of the quad. Now, it was like 2 weeks here. No one knew each other. I don't know how I got to be elected president, but I was. And I knew I could do that part okay. And then the dorm counselor said, okay, we're gonna have a party this weekend, and we need to invite girls to the party, so call up girls in the SEMGEM and invited them up. I said, what's the SEMGEM? Okay, so that's where I started from. He said, that's where all the girls live. So I said, as president, I would have to be a leader, so I'd need to get a date first. So Monday I called someone, and someone said yes. And on Thursday I went around to the guys, and I thought they were all Don Juans, and they would have their dates. They all had excuses why they didn't have a date. You know, they couldn't, all this kind of stuff, why it didn't work. So I said various times, okay, we had parties, so I always had to be the leader, get a date, and so forth. So that helped take my social aspect from 0 up a few notches. Then we had open house for fraternity. So we went around to the different fraternities, and when we come back, I would, again, president of the quad, I would talk to the guys about what they saw and about the different fraternities and so forth. So my dorm counselor said, you know, Frank, I know you're going around to the different fraternities, you're talking to them, but you know some of them, or almost all of them, have a covenant saying non-whites are not allowed. There's only one fraternity that's open, that's Phi Lambda. And I said, okay, that's not bad. I mean, I went there and they looked pretty good. So I know I was trying DU, and he said, I talked to the guys at DU, and they're not going to let you in. So I went down there. Clyde Bailey was president. Tom Deans was an active recruiter, and it was a pleasant environment. So even if it was the only one, it looked like it was going to be a good one. Okay, so I chose it. Right after that, I was called in by the dean of engineering, and he said, okay, first semester, you're the #1 engineer in the class, so we're going to award you the Union Carbide Scholarship for the rest of the time you're at Bucknell. I said, do I have any answer other than yes? So it was full-time. I decided then on 5 years, and I had $100 in the bookstore. So essentially all my college expenses were paid for, except room and board, and that would have been the fraternity house. So I was riding high. So right after that, I got a call from a friend of mine who lived in the West Wing. He was a sophomore transfer. So there were just 3 black guys on campus. Myself as a freshman, Dick Body as a sophomore, and Liveth as a senior in Phi Lambda. So I went to Dick Body's room, and I smelled smoke before I got there, and I opened the door, and the whole floor was blackened, and Dick was sitting on the bed. He said, what happened, Dick? He said, someone poured gasoline under the door and lit the floor on fire. So I said, what? I said, well, Dick, what did you do? I didn't do anything. I said, Dick, what did you do? You had to have done something. Well, it's probably because I asked out a certain girl for a date. I said, who was it? He said, well, it was the girlfriend of the football player from Sigma Chi. I said, Dick, don't be crazy. That's foolish. You're going to get us both in trouble. You got to be low key, under the radar, all this stuff. Well, everything went smooth.
Well, I happen to have a truck, a pickup truck, because I was a commuter. I have a lot in common with Tom because we're both from Lewisburg. I was born in Lewisburg at the old Evangelical Hospital. And I remember Tom when he was ahead of me in high school. And when I was commuting from a farm that I grew up on outside the town, I had this truck that my dad gave me. So I was the logical man to haul away the trash. So the trash got all loaded up from the house and the yard. And the guy said, the pledge class says, okay, Jim, you can take it to the dump now. So trying to please and be agreeable, I got in. And I didn't realize that in the back of the truck on top of the trash, some of the upperclassmen threw in stolen road signs. Now, these stolen road signs came from late night vigils by upper-class brothers who would visit watering holes outside Lewisburg, because Lewisburg was dry back then. One of the favorites was Pete and Ray's in Montana. I don't know if that's still there or not. Anyway, I'm driving away with the trash and these stolen road signs in the back of the truck, and luck would have it, a state policeman drove by, looked in, and saw the road signs. So the sirens went off, the lights started blinking, I got pulled over, I got taken to the Milton police station, arraigned and fined. And after it was all over, I thought, I think I'd rather have the regular, ordinary hazing they do at other fraternities. This wasn't a very good initiation. Anyway, I got reimbursed for my efforts. The second incident was what I'm going to call the Isley Brothers caper. Now, the Isley Brothers were a very hot band back in the late 1950s. And the house party came up in the spring of, I guess it was 1961. We were in the 3rd Street house then. Very nice house, by the way, much nicer than the Brown Street house. Anyway, I think Rick Arnold was our social chairman then. And we wanted to make a splash on campus. We wanted to impress everybody. So we somehow got the Isley Brothers to come to our fraternity. Their signature song was Twist and Shout, and that's still popular. So they came down to our social room, and a lot of the campus came down. I mean, we had standing room only. I mean, the house rocked. Everybody was twisting and shouting. And everybody was downstairs in the basement. And unbeknownst to us, one of their accomplices, Isley Brothers' accomplice, went upstairs and started robbing dates, pocketbooks, and other items from upstairs rooms where nobody was present. Luckily, somebody went upstairs, maybe it was Rick, and found this guy, and he was, at the moment when he saw he discovered, tried to flush all these stolen items down the toilets, and he was grabbed. Police were called. He was arrested, and the whole incident got settled out of court, somehow. Anyway, we never asked the Isley brothers back after that. That's all I had to say. I have one thing I want to do, and let me just get my glass here. This is kind of in keeping with my own ethnic background. I want everybody to raise a glass to Tommy Deans. Tom, this is to you, the best friend that Phi Lambda Theta chapter of Phi Chi will ever have. May you long be remembered as the true mentor and spirit and voice of Phi Lam that you are. Shlanka, which in my Irish vernacular is long life and good health. Thank you very much.
Well, that's another story I never heard. I told you there'd be some new stories tonight. So, staying in the 1960s a little bit longer, we now have a man who was my big brother when I was pledged and then inactive. And Rick's been pretty active in the Alumni Association. Anyway, he came here tonight. He's here at our head table, and he has a few words for you all.
I'm so pleased to be able to honor Tom today. Tom wasn't just instrumental in building the house that's named in his honor. Tom helped to guide the successful evolution of every major Phi Lambda Theta event occurring since his days as a student. As I read the history of the Phi Lambda Theta expressed on the chapter website, especially the part about the chapter of the 50s and 60s and 70s, and the realization of the House on the Hill, affiliating with Chi Phi, and the 2006 reorganization, all recited on the website, I recognize most of that history not only as Tom's writing style, but I remember that Tom was an important driver in each of those events. But in the 30 names mentioned in that history, Tom's name is mentioned briefly only once. That's Tom, always giving other people credit for things he accomplished with his style of discussion, planning, negotiation, compromise, and his ability to bring people together. But there's another extremely important thing Tom accomplished with his wisdom and leadership. Tom lived an example of decency and honor. As a young, immature man, I was befriended by Tom, a role model that I looked up to. He taught me how to take issues and work them out. He showed me how to confront problems. He set an example of moderation and decent living. Tom was perhaps as large an influence on me as my father and my grandfather. I imagine that hundreds of other young men who, like me, have been influenced by Tom's leadership and mentoring Thank you, Tom, for all you have done for me and for all of the other Phi Lambs and Chi Phis.
Well, I can certainly agree with that, Rick. Tom is just always quick to deflect credit to others. He's just, I've always been impressed by that. So now we're going to jump out of the 1960s, and our next speaker is Mr. Rick Hess. Rick was a classmate of John Gianetti's, and they're still best of friends. They live close together in Maryland. And Rick's had an illustrious career as a lawyer and working for our beloved federal government. And anyway, Rick, it is your turn, and come on up to the podium.
So sitting here, I was remembering being an undergraduate thinking, when are they going to stop talking? Followed by, when does the bar open again? So I just want to share a couple things. First, to echo the sentiments that Al Osgood shared this morning, and guys, remember this, especially the younger guys who haven't had a chance to appreciate it just yet. You know, there's a saying that behind every great, a woman telling him what to do. The sooner you guys learn that, the more successful you will be. So I want to share a couple of life lessons, but one main life lesson. I learned a lot from Tom as both an undergrad, as an alum. I want to share what I think is one of the most important lessons. I wish I could say I coined this phrase. It was coined by another Greek. The unexamined life is not worth living. The unexamined life is not worth living. Those words were uttered by another Greek before Tom's time by the name of Socrates, when he was being tried for the corruption of youth. Now, we're not here to try Tom tonight for the corruption of years of youth at Phi Lambda Theta, but I want to tell you why that lesson stuck with me. As an undergrad, Tom and the Phi Lambda Thetas were very generous in their time and their treasure, and they asked us to sponsor a lecture series. One of the first lessons I learned was how to put together a speaker series. And I didn't really even appreciate who the speaker was, but Manning Marable was one of our speakers. When we arrived at the hall, I was surprised to see there was almost no room for the brothers to sit, because the place was packed with professors who had come to see and listen to Manning Marable speak. It wasn't until then that I appreciate that Tom was on to something and that the Phi Lambs were on to something. As a national director of the fraternity, I had occasion to visit one of our chapters, the Tau chapter, at the University of Alabama. They were having problems with recruitment. So we thought, the nationals thought, you know, maybe if we were to help the brothers appreciate that part of recruitment could be achieved if we had a more diverse brotherhood, that might be a way we could help grow the chapter. And so we had the chapter all come dutifully sat in a room like this, listened to the nationals, me, our undergraduate consultants, or graduate consultants, chapter leadership consultants, we called them then, explain how you go about recruiting a more diverse brotherhood. And everyone listened politely. Everyone was engaged in the conversation. And then when we took a break, the Alpha came up to me and he said, "Brother Hess, we appreciate everything you are saying, and we agree with everything you're saying. But if we do what you are saying, we're going to have a cross burning in our front lawn by the end of the night." That taught me two things. One, my experience is very different from everybody else's experience around the fraternity. And two, and there's no pun intended in this, you need to get some skin in the game. If you are not willing to be an agent of change, whether it's social, if it's gender-based, whatever it is, you're not espousing the lessons of Chi Phi, of Phi Lambda Theta, and of Tom Dean's. Just 2 years ago, I received a memo, as did all the federal workforce, that said, you will suspend all diversity training until further notice. How do you cope with that? I'll tell you how you cope with it. You lead by example. You influence the folks that you have the ability to influence, and you put some skin in the game. So what I ask you to consider is, how can you carry that life lesson that I learned as an undergraduate 30 years ago? How do you plan to carry that forward? How do you plan to examine your lives, starting today, starting tomorrow, in 5 years, in 10 years, as you encounter the challenges that you will along life's path? So thank you, Tom, for sharing that lesson with me as an undergraduate, and for not yelling at me when I, trying to save money, turned off all the heat right before winter break and flooded the fraternity house over Christmas. And thank you for all that you've done for your many years of service to Phi Lam, to Chi Phi, and to your family, the Brotherhood. You are a special person.
Well, thank you, Rick. And I certainly want to echo your sentiments about the woman behind the man. And I want to offer special thanks to my wife, who's been very supportive of my fraternity activities over the years. She's here tonight, and I love you, Jan. You've been a great support. Our next speaker is Glenn Vischer, and he is from Morris Plains, New Jersey. He pledged in 1985 and graduated in 1989. And he has been working for a candy company in New Jersey ever since. And as he says, it's been a sweet job. So come on up.
Thank you, Harley. Tom and Gail, brothers of Chi Phi and PLT, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. It's a real pleasure to be here, to be able to stand in front of you and talk a bit about Tom Dean's and his effect on me as just an everyday member of Chi Phi. Now, Tom's been a constant force in my life, and this is honor truly befitting him. And to give you a bit of background on me, As Harley said, I graduated from Bucknell in 1989. I was not a traditional fraternity goer. I didn't drink, I wasn't a heavy partier, and I was pretty quiet and introspective. And during the late 1980s, the fraternity scene on Bucknell was pretty heavily into the social aspect. So I really wasn't sure if the fraternity scene was even for me, but I wanted to give it a try, to check it out. And when I came to Chi Phi, I knew instantly that this was the place to be because it was different. It had different perspectives, it had different goals, and it was inclusive. It was inclusive of everyone, of creeds, colors, perspectives, everyone. And all of this was because of Tom's leadership. Now, as actives in the late 1980s, we had to find balance, and this was balance between our studies and staying relevant in the social scene, parties, and in social diversity, with speakers such as Manning Marable at our minority speaker session and our roundtable discussions, and experiences with our Special Olympics. Now, Tom actively pushed us out of our comfort zone. And anyone who has dealt with Tom knows that he can do that with a force. And he wanted us to meet new people, to bring diversity and inclusion to Chi Phi and to our campus instead of waiting for it to come to us, be an active participant. And he pulled us out of our primarily white suburban perspectives, and he put us in the forefront of very topical discussions which hold true today. We had to balance the stresses of college, of being on our own, most probably for the first time, and of being responsible, of doing the right thing for the right reason at the right time in our lives, on the great landscape of Bucknell, and in our culture. But we had people like Tom who helped us to build a strong foundation. Now, Tom was a great mentor and guide to all of us. He told us what needed to be said, and it wasn't always pretty. In fact, it often was not pretty, but it was always necessary to make us better members of Chi Phi and better men. He guided us and gave us a safe space to grow and to flourish. Now, during my time in the fraternity, I was both the Gamma and the Zeta, and for those uninitiated, that's the secretary and the historian, and I worked behind the scenes to make things run smoothly. I had some contact with Tom during my college years, but not a whole lot of personal time, as our previous presenters have had. But I distinctly remember an evening. Back then, we did not have a kitchen in the fraternity house, and we all ate together in the caf. But at this dinner, his words and his intense interest in our future and his desire to see us succeed at any cost weaved their magic on me. And by the time the evening ended, whether I knew it or not, I was the secretary of the Alumni Association. And I have had the joy and the benefit of serving in that position for about 20 years along with Tom, and it has been a wonderful ride. Most of my best memories of Tom have been from our time in the Alumni Association, and we had honest and positive discussions on so many topics that ranged beyond the fraternity into life, into what it means to be a man. And I can still remember some of the biggest topics from our discussions. We talked about accountability. He would tell me and he'd tell the other actives, you must be accountable for your actions, because what you do and what we all do has an effect on our future. We talked about connection. And at the time, I often wondered if the work that we and the work that I did as secretary had really any significant importance. And according to Tom, it mattered very much, because we as actives and as alumni, and I as the secretary, we acted as a connector between people, between the alumni and the actives, between the people outside of our bubble at Chi Phi. We were a connection between the past, the present, and the future. And if that connection falters, then we are lost. So the connection between brothers and that connection that Tom has instilled in all of us is paramount. I am who I am, and we all are who we are in many ways because of Tom's guidance and mentoring. You inspire us to be better. I can still remember some of Tom's early words to me when he said, "Do your work with friendship, love, truth, and empathy, and remember that you matter." Well, Tom, you matter. Thank you.
That was great, Glenn. Thank you very much. And earlier in the evening, I had mentioned Chris O'Brien, and his son Kevin is here with us tonight. And he is the next speaker, the last one before our featured speaker of tonight, which is Tom Deans. So Kevin, you can kind of bring up the rear, and we welcome you here. We're glad to have you.
Good evening. Well, Chris O'Brien is not my father. I'm not even related to him. But you know, us Irish, we all look alike anyways. You know, drinking while Irish, something like that. But Frank, I want to tell you, we got even with, well, SAE. They're missing their lion from 1990, so. Yes. I'm sorry, Tom. I didn't mean it. No, I came here. I drove 13 hours to get up here. So you know how much I love you. You know it. And very special person to me. I didn't know I was part of a social experiment. No idea. I was just there to have fun. I'm like, who in their right mind? The guy graduated 33 years ago. I'm going to kick his ass on the pong table here in about 2 minutes. Come on. Anyways, I never knew I was part of a social experiment until it dawned on me. A decade later, maybe? 2 decades later? Yesterday? I learn every day. Hell, I even married an Italian. That's you know. To me, it was just, we were just having fun. We were just there, the brotherhood, the camaraderie. And, you know, yeah, Tom and Gail, I know you both don't have any children, but believe me, it's overrated. My father said so. But you have touched so many lives. Even in just a small way, even if it's just a small way. Well, you're talking about hundreds of young men that go out in the world and start figuring things out. And you have torn down some of these walls. I came from a white suburbia. I mean, no, I went to school with guys from the Brooklyn, Bronx, Malaysia, Pakistan, India, Jewish, you name it, we had it all. In fact, by the time I graduated, I looked at our composite. We had 40% minorities, at least. 40%. And, you know, back then, Bucknell probably was 10, 15% minority at best. In fact, driving by through the campus today, I don't think it's any different. I don't think they've done much more on diversity. But we have. We have. And we continue to do it. And what a legacy you leave. A living legacy. A living legacy you leave in the hearts of each one of us. So as we walk down the hallways of Chi-Phi, Thomas R. Dean's house, we will not only evoke the spirit in the name of Biff Hoppin, but of Tom Deeds, and rightfully so. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you, Kevin. So as you've heard from some of the speakers tonight, we graduates, alumni, not only had influence in our own local communities, but many of us have traveled around the world. We have friends around the world. We've done business around the world. And so you have an opportunity also as you move through life to spread these ideals around the world, not just in your local areas. So I'm sure there are many, many more here who would like to say something, and unfortunately, because of time constraints, we had to limit this tonight. But as I said before, our website will be open. You can go on at any time. There are instructions on how to do it, and you can leave your own words of personal congratulations to Tom, and of course it's on the website. We'll all get to see it. So again, with the coming down here to the final countdown, Tom, are you up to saying a few words tonight? Yes, you do.
Okay.
You need to be over here in front of the camera. Would you like to? You sit down and I'll set up the mic for you. Okay. That's excellent idea.
I'm so pleased with what I've heard tonight, and I know that we can pull this off and make a difference. And it's not the talking about it. We know that we share very positive human values that are shared by many others. But we were committed to making a difference ourselves. And going out there, sometimes like selling World Book and you get 6 no's. And I remember one. It was a farmer, and he lambasted his son because he didn't like to do his chores. And I thought for a minute, I said, you know, some people are born to work with their hands, and some are born to work with their minds. And that's where your son comes in. He said, which is the best binding? And a life was changed over a comment. And I remember John Giannetti, we heard the expression, all politics is local, and I believe it is. But change is made in small groups. And the thing that kept me dedicated to the Phi Lambda Theta chapter of Chi-Phi was the fact that we were a small group, but making a big difference. And that isn't easy. I always called it equitable access to the fraternal experience. And the 2 categories that are so tough, and which shouldn't be, one is foreign students who come to this country without a frame of reference for what fraternities are all about, and inner city black students who have no experience or feel for what a fraternity can do. And we've reached out, and our values are pure, but our performance is not. We need to do a better job. So I will cut everything short in modesty for the patience you've shown by saying, let's do this together. The chapter will never be stronger than it is right now, and it's time to reach out and find those people who are excluded, not in our minds, but in our acts. And so having a foreign students lunch during the summer and having the diversity lectureship, these are small steps. But what I'd like to see is our diversity committee sitting down at the beginning of the year, each year, with the foreign student advisor and the multicultural advisor and the GRIO Institute and all of those organizations that are working sometimes behind the scenes to try to rectify an imperfect balance. And so I hope that the diversity committee can turn those themselves into an appeal for action and lead the rest of the chapter to understand that it's important work that we have to do, and it's never a lot of fun, but the rewards are enormous. And so I welcome the mentors who came together today after lunch, and they said that they were interested in being mentors to the chapter and picking an area within the chapter that they knew about and could communicate with the actives so that we can keep this thing going. It's not easy. It hasn't been easy to keep Phi Lambda Theta chapter of Chi Phi afloat. We had some tough times, and once we had to close the chapter with great reluctance. And another time, during the hippie period, they decided that they wanted to have a chapter without meetings and a chapter where people could do whatever they wanted to do. That was what we should stand for. And I said, well, guys, you're welcome to do that. We respect it, but you can't do it in our house. Another time, Mel Woodward and I spent till 3 o'clock in the morning talking with a group of about 8 to 10 black students who felt that they had found a haven in our fraternity and wanted to turn it into an all-black fraternity. And Mel and I, about 2 o'clock, had almost given up. And then we said, you know, we're a melting pot. And if we turn ourselves into a black fraternity, we've addressed your needs, but we've created another ghetto. And that's not who and what we are. So this is an imperfect and difficult balance. And I'm counting on you people for finding how we can do this and going forward. But thank you all. It's a great honor for me. I never expected it. I called the president, Ben Snook, at one point and said, well, I wondered if I could have a picture on the wall. And that would be nice. And then I sent a long email to Al, and I said, now, Al, what would you think if we did this? Because I wouldn't dream of doing it unless you were in favor of it. He said, Tom, that's not enough. We should name the whole damn building after you. And you know, that's what they did. That's what they did. So, thank my wife. Thank all the wives and girlfriends who are here for helping make this possible. And I hope you'll all go forth, make the differences in our society, and prove that small groups is part of the key to creating these integrated relationships. But again, thank you very much.
Hi, Tom. This is Chris O'Brien. I have the extraordinary honor of being the chairman of the board of Bucknell University, class of 1980. You probably don't remember me, but I remember you very well. I remember you with Mr. Woodward at a point in time where Phi Lambda Theta was having some difficulties, and you were there to help us with our challenges all the time. You were vital to the growth, development, and existence of Phi Lambda Theta. I joined as at the end of freshman year. We got to know each other very well. I was the president of Phi Lambda Theta for 1 year, and I worked next to you, and I saw the way that you led, and I saw the passion that you had for Phi Lambda Theta and all that it meant. So I know that you are receiving this extraordinary honor, one very well received. I'm sorry I can't be with you today, but I just wanted to record this short video to thank you on behalf of all Phi Lambs and Bucknell University for everything that you have done. Thank you and congratulations.
Well, Thomas Dean's Bucknell class of 1955, I don't think we've met. And I'm not sure we can this weekend due to the busy schedule, but I want to first congratulate you on an incredibly successful and long life and career, but also, of course, your association with Bucknell through your beloved fraternity. I've got a bunch of notes here. I'm not going to pretend to read them because I don't really know you, but still, reading this, I am so glad to have this opportunity to say thank you and congratulations. I don't think I know of another chapter house that has been named for an individual. You graduated from Bucknell 2 years before I was born, so you have been involved with this great institution for a very, very long time, and I congratulate you on that. You've obviously had it in your heart and in your soul and your mind and your blood and your body to take care of this place, to make contributions way above and beyond what anyone could rationally expect. But I am certain when you graduated in 1955, you'd have no possible clue that 66 years later, you would have accomplished all these things, that your association would now be celebrated in such a special way, and that the president will be talking to you on a video recorded on a device the size of a deck of cards. Life changes, life moves on, especially when technology is involved, and yet the core principles remain true. And I can read this about you, and I know that you have remained true to your principles. And in a changing world, the world needs more people like Thomas Dean's Bucknell class of 1955. So thank you for who you are, what you've achieved, what you stand for, what you've done, and I dare say what you will do in the years ahead. Warmest congratulations. Take care now. Bye-bye.
Tom, it's your old buddy Steve. Here I am in Naples, Florida, enjoying the warm sunshine. I'm really delighted that you're being honored in this way. You certainly deserve it. I'm cognizant of all the great work that you've done for Phi Lambda over the years and all the people that you've helped. I was asked to reminisce some about my recollections in our relationship. And kind of what sticks in my mind most is I think it was the summer of 1954. Boy, that's a long time ago. And you came to New York to indulge in your passion, which was sports, and went to a baseball game, either in Yankee Stadium or the Polo Grounds. My memory fails me a bit in these later years, but and I don't even remember who won that game. But after the game, you took the subway to Brooklyn, and I think we went to a tennis match the next day in Forest Hills. But what strikes me the most is that evening, we drove down in my parents' car to Coney Island. And you, having your first experience there, had the courage to ride the Cyclone, which was the most feared roller coaster probably in the country at that time. And you rode it 4 times. And that, I think the last 3, you did it with your hands up in the air, not holding onto the safety bar. And that to me was, you know, an awesome feat. And I shall always remember that. But probably more importantly, you know, I remember all the fun we had at Bucknell. You were a mentor to me, and you got me interested in the Bucknellian, where I eventually became sports editor. And then I spent a few years in the newspaper business after graduation, and couldn't have done that without the Bucknell experience before I went into business. I hope you guys are still traveling, and maybe someday you'll come down to visit us here in Naples. And again, congratulations for a most deserved honor. And my only regret is that I couldn't be with you on this important day. Done.
Hi, Tom. It's been a while since we've been face to face, but I'm honored to be in this position to say congratulations to you, and just thank you for so much for what you've been to dotted line to me over the years, but solid line, double lines to Phi Lambda, the fraternity, and just continuing the relationship that was established years and years ago. And I understand that in a couple of years, we'll be celebrating 100 years of Phi Lambda Theta. But a lot of the continuity and the legacy is due to you, Tom. And thank you so much for being who you are, for the commitment you've initiated and made, and a great example and a model to all of us. Certainly not to the, we're not, or I'm not to the same degree involvement that you have been, and it cannot be duplicated. You are a unique individual, but the idea of Phi Lambda and what it means to me is, as it does with others, a significant relationship that I was able to establish back in actually early on, 1959, 58, 59. I graduated from Plainfield High School in New Jersey and came to Bucknell, and first got involved with Phi Lambda in the second semester of my freshman year, when there was the open house attitude on the campus for the fraternities and sororities actions. But I cherish the years, although I didn't get my degree from Bucknell. I was there for 7 semesters and cherish the relationships. As a pledge, the first semester of my sophomore year there, I was the only pledge that lived at 34 Brown Street. That was, I'm not sure what it and how you can relate to Brown Street. I'm not sure if you resided there back in the days when you were a Bucknellian, a student, I should say. But I lived at 34 Brown Street with 7, there were 8 of us living in the house at that time. The house, I think part of it was condemned or dilapidated. We couldn't live there, but it was a great time as an individual pledge to be among the other 7 active brothers. They treated me with respect, and I appreciate that. Then also, subsequent years, I stayed several semesters at 203 South 3rd Street. I've been to the new house on the hill, visiting, stopping by a couple times, and very excited about just the advances, especially when I will see the the name Tom Deans added to the identifying marker, however that's to be determined. But about you, and I just appreciate so much. There have been occasions when we've gotten together as an alumni in various places, not necessarily on campus, but other places. I remember in Virginia, there was an alumni gathering maybe 15, 18 years ago. And there have been other times. Some of us have brothers, those that were at school between the late 50s subsequent to you and into the early 60s, we've gotten together from time to time, and still there's contact with many of those brothers. I could start naming them, and I'm sure I'll leave someone out, but I won't do that. But thanks so much to you, Tom. Your loyalty, your perseverance, the attitude that you have in spreading the word, the subsequent affiliation with Chi Phi on a national basis, I'm sure has your fingerprints all over it. Just the attitude of maintaining what Phi Lambda is about: friendship, love, and truth. And that's very, very meaningful. I just appreciate so much the opportunity, the relationships, the experience that I've had, and the continuing fellowship with the brothers of Phi Lambda. It's I very, very much appreciate it. But enjoy the time this weekend, and I'm sure that there'll be many stories and experiences and relationships that will be reestablished, and some new ones certainly. But all the accolades and all the things that are mentioned about you are well deserved. And I know you'll take it in stride with the humility that I've seen you project. Keep it up, young man. Keep it up, brother. And thanks be to you and to the Lord for this experience. God bless you, and the weekend. Have a great time.
Hello, I'm Bob Stevens, class of 1974, and greetings to everyone, with a special hello to Tom and Gail Deans on this auspicious day. You know, one needs to wonder about a man, a relatively old man, spending so much time with a fraternity and a bunch of 20-somethings. Either he never lost his partying spirit, or there must be something odd about him. For as Ogden Nash said, you're only young once, but you can stay immature indefinitely. I believe Tom's motivations and ideals are deeper and more nuanced than that. The college experience should be transformative. If you look at the advice that Tom gives to the fraternity, it focuses on making the fraternal experience a transformative one as well. Transformative in the lines with the principles of the founding of Phi Lambda Theta, the interracial, nonsectarian ideals that emphasize that diversity is a strength. Tom walks that walk. He encourages diversity within the fraternity, encouraging members from different backgrounds socially, economically, and racially, always challenging the brothers toward that goal, because he knows that living and eating and working with a diverse population of brothers will be transformative. My fraternity class was rushed by a diverse group of engaged alumni. Tom was one of those who spearheaded that rush, along with many others, including Mel Woodward, Harley Bennett, Rick Arnold, Mike Cronish, Biff Hoffman, and Don Ward. My class was an interesting mix of men who grew up on farms and lived in suburbia and lived in urban areas, men who were working their way through school and those who drove expensive cars. My best friends were in engineering, economics, computer science, psychology, and I was in education. That diversity and that of the engaged alumni with whom I interacted, who were lawyers, accountants, professors, writers, broadened my perspectives and began a rich transformation that has made my college experience better and affects me to this day. Tom has been in the forefront of pushing the implementation of those ideals so that others may benefit as he did and as I did from the transformational experience this fraternity uniquely offers. In the run-up to today, all of the brothers with whom I have spoken and have said the same thing. Dedicating the house to Tom Deans is the right thing to do. It's a dedication to the most dedicated. I would also, in closing, like to recognize Tom's wife, Gail, who has been an active partner in this endeavor with him. They are a strong partnership that has been invaluable to our fraternity for over 60 years. I wish you both the best in friendship, love, and truth.
Hi everybody, this is Donnie B coming to you from the shores of South Padre Island. No, that's not a fake background. That's the view off our porch. I'm really pleased to be able to spend some time with you tonight, especially in relation to our friend Tom Deans. When I first met Tom, it was 50 years ago. I was a freshman. It was 1971. I can still picture Tom. Bushy black hair, tall guy, long black sideburns, and a bushy mustache. Black turtleneck, peace sign necklace. We knew he was just trying to relate to us, since he was a generation ahead. But he's been doing that for 50 years, to you guys too in the active chapter. I just want to relate that Phi Lambda Theta ideals are more important today than ever, even in the 70s. Friendship, love, and truth, and especially truth, are so important now. I have a little gift for Tom, and I'm just going to hand it off here. I'm just going to hand it off over here to Harley. So Harley, when you get a chance, hand that off to Tom, because it's emblematic of the ideals that we've shared for so long. And to Tom, on your special day, thank you for changing my life. I needed it bad. In any case, to the active chapter, I just want to mention a few other things, and that is, if you're struggling at Bucknell, don't let it bring you down too much. I barely graduated there with a 2.1 average. And you know what? I learned more than most of the people that I ran into in my business. Chemical engineering was a tough major at the time, but turns out I learned a lot, even though I didn't get good grades. But I learned more at Phi Lam than I learned any place else. Enjoy your day, Tom. And you guys, look to the future. It's all in your hands. Thank you very much. Donnie B, signing off. See you on the Funway.
Hi, Tom, and congratulations. I extend my warmest and deepest thanks to you for all that you have done for Bucknell and for the Chi Phi fraternity. You are what they call a selfless leader. Our Greek letter system has been shaped by your leadership and by your dedication, and I cannot think of a better way for you to be honored than for the Chi Phi house to be named after you. Again, congratulations.
Tom Deans, Zav Negroni, 7:37 Eastern, September 29th, 2021. I am so sorry I am not there to celebrate with this unbelievable, or for this unbelievable occasion. I haven't seen you since Kevin O'Brien's wedding, but I'm sure you and Gail have just continued on in such a cool way. I've loved hearing a little bit about what you guys are up to. I do appreciate that I spent more time with you when I was 20 versus now that I'm over 50. And I just want to tell you that I think all the things you've done for the fraternity have been nothing short of outstanding. Your dedication, your commitment, measured in decades, has been remarkable. I wish you the absolute best, hoping for just a tremendous celebration and great memories with some fantastic people
that have been in my life and certainly in yours.